Today, I want to chat with you about freeing up your time while growing your business. The experts that I talk to, the experts that I work with are typically people that have a real expertise, right? They're a coach, they're a consultant, they're an expert, they're a service provider, and they have a real expertise, a real talent, a real skill, a real magic to either help someone transform their life or to bring a real useful high level solution to someone's problem, to someone's challenge. And when you're an expert like this, you typically, when you start, you grow a business around your expertise. You're the person, you're it. And there comes a point where once you get to six figures a year, multiple six figures a year, you might want to change how you're doing business because at some point, the business is not working unless you're working. And you might want to free up some of your time. You might want to be able to have the business work when you're not working, right? So, um, if you're an expert service provider, coach, consultant, and you want to free up more of your time, but you are someone who you do like working with clients, right? You may not want to work full time, right? You don't want to probably stress yourself out and work full time in client work, but um, the people I talk to are experts and they enjoy helping people transform their lives. They enjoy their client work as long as it's with the right work clients and it's not, too full time. And the problem is when you've built a business around your expertise, um, typically the advice you're given to free up your time is the advice you're given is to stop doing the client work, right? Start hiring employees or outsourcing things, right? So a lot of advice that's given to experts is start hiring other coaches, other, you know, consultants, another expert, someone else to do the client work. Now, again, the people I talk to, they don't really want to do that because their favorite part of the business is usually the client work. So they don't want to outsource everything, especially that. But typically, that's where I find people, the advice they're given is that's the first thing they outsource. It's either marketing that they outsource first, or like ads or something, or it's the client work. Now, the problem is if you're a real expert, if you have a real magic to help people, typically, if you hire other people to do that, they're just not going to be as good at it as you, right? So typically, when I see a company that has outsourced the client work, usually the client work is not as good, right? The client results, outcomes, and just their experience of that company is not as good as if the person who owns the business, who's the master craftsman, the master expert, is if they were doing it. Because they have so much care and experience and expertise that when they work with a client, it's a much different experience. So, in my experience, if you want to free up some time and you want to free up yourself from the business to some degree, you don't want to outsource or hire employees to do the client work first. In fact, probably ever. You could hire other people to do maybe some of it, but definitely if you enjoy that work and that's what you're put on this earth to do, I recommend you keep doing that at least part time, right? For me, I want to be doing what I'm doing probably till the day that I die. I don't ever see myself retiring from the kind of client work I do because I love it. It's my passion. It's what I'm put on this earth to do. Now, I never want to do it full time. I never want to do it with clients that, are miserable to work with, but I want to do it a couple hours here and there forever. Because I would do it without the money because I love it. So if the answer is not to hire people or outsource the client work, and again, the answer is also probably not, at least immediately, to outsource marketing, sales, client acquisition, because again, any company you hire, I've hired companies to run Facebook ads, to run ads, to do marketing. Most of them suck. So you're going to be managing them. I don't want to be a manager of people. I want to be in client work, helping people change their lives. So I don't want to be managing people, whether that's other coaches and consultants, whether that's a marketing company or a team of salespeople. So then what do we do? We want to look at, there's two things to look at if you want to free up your time while still working your magic in the client work. There's two things to look at. One is, what assumptions about business are keeping things exactly as they are keeping you this involved in the business. So, one of the biggest levers to free up your time is to look at your some assumptions about business and how you're doing business. And probably once we bust some of those assumptions, it's going to open up us up to doing business in ways where we free up our time and we get a lot more leverage. So that's one. Look at the assumptions. Number two is look at your own way of being as the business founder. Look at your own way of being, your operating system. So let's talk about these quickly. The first one is your assumptions. I used to have an assumption, 20 years ago, that in order to get a client, create a client, uh, especially at a high dollar amount, where someone's working with me one on one, it's a high investment, it's a high fee. I used to think you had to do that on a phone call. So when my wife and I first started our businesses, um, we did hours and hours of phone calls, sales calls per week to get clients. I thought that's how you had to enroll clients at high investments. And I did that for years. Took up a lot of time, and I don't really like doing sales calls. So it was also very draining. It was also very just emotionally draining. But after a number of years, I saw someone who was enrolling high investment, high ticket clients without doing sales calls. And all of a sudden, my assumption that you had to use sales calls, that was completely gone. Because I saw someone else who was, they were having clients come in at even higher fees than I was doing. They weren't using phone calls at all. So all of a sudden, that assumption went out the window. And I'm like, oh, okay, so there is another way. And I figured that out. And all of a sudden, I was creating clients at high dollar amounts without sales calls. That opened up, between my wife and I, that opened up 10, 15, 20 hours a week. No more sales calls. And we didn't hire it out. We didn't hire a sales team. We didn't do any of that. We just busted an assumption and did business in a different way that gave us more leverage and was more enjoyable for us. I guess another assumption that I see from a lot of experts, coaches, consultants is that um, you have to build a big audience or list in order to, excuse me, in order to create the kind of business that you want financially. I used to think that. Again, 20 years ago when I started, I was trying to build a list. I was trying to build a big audience because I thought, the assumption I had was you build a list, an audience, and you sell them stuff. Well, luckily for me, I met someone who didn't do that at all. They didn't have an email list, they didn't have a big audience, they didn't do really any marketing, hardly any content. And they were creating more clients than me. They had a business that was doing more revenue and profits than I was. And I was spending all this time creating content, creating videos, trying to build an email list, trying to build an audience on all the social media platforms. And this person wasn't doing any of that. They were creating clients in a very different way. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, okay. So my assumption that you have to build this big list or audience is not true. You could, that is one way to do it, but you don't have to do it that way. So take a look at the assumptions in your business, especially when it comes to marketing, when it comes to sales, or when it comes to delivery of your services. And when you look at those assumptions, you're going to find some that are keeping you doing business the way you're doing it now, spending the exact time you're spending in any of those areas. And when you can get around other people that are doing business in different ways, that they no longer buy into those assumptions, all of a sudden you see the opportunities and you can get leverage in your business without hiring out all these things. Now, the second way that you can free up your time while growing your business without, hiring employees and outsourcing all kinds of things is by looking at your own way of being as the founder, is your own operating system. There's typically going to be things about how you're doing business that come specifically from your own internal operating system, right? So if you feel guilt every time, let's say clients are reaching out to you nonstop and you're messaging with them, you're getting extra calls, you're doing all these things, and you might be doing those things purely out of guilt, a feeling of guilt, an operating system of like that operates on the fact of I need to be there for people at all times. If your operating system is I need to be there for people at all times, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be there for people at all times. And what I found is that's not even the most helpful thing for people, your clients. They might think it is if you let them do that, but typically that's not going to be the thing that gets them the best results. So we need to work on. So, for example, if you're a business owner and you come from an operating system that um, you're looking for problems and there's always fires to put out, guess what you're going to be doing? You're always going to be putting out fires in your business. So, we need to upgrade that operating system, that way of being, so that you can really move from being an operator, which is someone who's always in the business, always working on the business, always thinking about the business, to a founder. Go from operator to founder in terms of your operating system, your internal way of being, your internal operating system. And when you become the founder, all of a sudden you'll see all these places where you can free up your time. And again, this is not with hiring employees or outsourcing things. It's by you being able to do things in a different way because you're being the founder. You're operating from a different place. You're coming from a different place. So those are the two places I would look first. If you want to free up your time while growing your business, and you're an expert who likes doing the client work at least part time, look at those two factors first to make that happen.